Alright, so if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're an artist and you're in the market for a drawing tablet. You're like me and you're not sure if you should wait and save your money and buy an expensive tablet or if you should just buy the cheap one. And I've been using this $40 tablet I got. It's basically just your typical cheap plastic screenless tablet. It does your basic functions, it has some buttons. And I've been using it for about 5 years now, so I guess this is what I have to say in favor of cheap tablets and my experience using them, and I can say at least this brand does last, but it has some exceptions, and I'll explain them now. Alright, I want to try to keep this video as short as possible, so excuse me if I talk too fast or if I speed through topics. But one thing to keep in mind too before I begin, before purchasing this tablet, I did have some prior experience to Photoshop and a little bit of digital art, and that I was using the tablet. My use for the tablet was mainly for game development, and I guess you could say just learning game development basic tablets. So basically, in my opinion, if you're just starting out, you should always go with a cheaper tablet, always. I'm going to start off with the cons real quick. I guess the biggest con for this one in particular was the pen. It was the cheapest part of the whole set, I guess. As you can see, it's got a little bit of duct tape in the middle that actually holds it together pretty much. It twists at 3 parts, and over the time, the nibs, you do get extra nibs, but the nibs do wear down pretty easily. It's easy to switch, which is good, but the batteries do last, which is nice. It doesn't drain the battery, but every time I'm drawing with this, even pretty much like a few months out of the box, it constantly falls apart, so you're constantly having to tighten and twist it, and that's actually why I added the duct tape, because it actually prevents it from doing that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is you'll probably end up having trouble with your pen unless you do some research. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Pens are probably going to be the cheapest part of the whole thing. Next, it's not really the worst. Well, I guess it is actually. Mine in particular, again, I can't speak for all cheap models. I've only had this one in particular for 5 years. The cord that came with it was too short, which was a problem. And eventually, over time, the port where the cable starts to wiggle. So if you bumped it even just the slightest bit, if you were on an uneven surface, it would unplug. And when I was in Photoshop particularly, for some reason the settings just would not apply, and I'd have to close down my current session in Photoshop, reapply the settings in the drivers, and then reopen Photoshop. And that's just if it unplugs, which happens quite often. Again, that's just something to keep in mind. Most of these tablets, the cons are all just minor little insignificances. Once you can get past the little insignificances, you'll get used to it, and you'll find that your art will improve no matter what. And I guess my last gripe about this one in particular is, as you can see, the buttons, they're just kind of lightly etched. So I have these little post-it notes that I made just to make it easier, because I didn't really use them at first, but then I found them extremely useful later on as I started developing my skills. If you're someone that has never used a tablet, play around with the tablet. Like, if it has buttons, you definitely use them. But oh yeah, I guess there is one last thing. One thing, if you're gonna do more research, definitely look into I don't know what the actual term it is. I'll probably look it up and put it in post, but it's when you draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. Some cheaper tablets, I think this has to do with dots per inch. I can't remember, again, what the recommended dots per inch is, but depending on that, it'll look really jagged and pixelated. So if you're someone who wants to make high quality work, like you're going to be selling it, I definitely look into that and make sure that your diagonal lines are not going to end up jagged, and they're going to be straight. That also could do with drivers. Make sure your drivers are updated, and it also could do with the pen. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind when getting a cheap tablet. Overall, I can say I am completely satisfied with my purchase. I was extremely doubtful at first. I was one of those people that just, I don't know, I guess, you see all the YouTubers, they all have the professional equipment. So you immediately subconsciously assume that you need, eventually once you become a master status, you'll have all that equipment. I feel like now with my mindset, after using this for 5 years, I could see myself in the professional industry still using this, at least to get some professional rough drafts done. Like, my view on expensive equipment is only deteriorated, I guess. That's not to say that this thing is perfect. I would definitely rather spend more money on expensive equipment just to have more conveniences, like the pen and the cord. That being said, the number one thing that I've learned from this is make sure that you have a clear goal when it comes to developing your art skills and what you want to do. If this tablet, like say if you're an animator, I highly recommend it. If you're, say, gonna go into the gaming industry, I wouldn't recommend it at first unless I knew exactly what you wanted. Like if you're gonna be a character, character texture and modeler, sculptor for sure. But if you're just gonna be a level designer, you probably won't need it at all. And I know too that there's gonna be people who are they're gonna be picky and want the screen, and I was definitely one of those people. Like, I waited long to buy this purchase, and it was because I wanted to find a cheaper alternative for a screen. But after doing the research, all the ones that were affordable that had a screen, just the problems and the cons just completely outweighed the value of getting it. So it did take a while for sure to learn, just looking at the screen and then drawing on the tablet, but it's definitely, once you learn it, you don't forget it. At first I was using this to learn, but now I'm using it on my portfolio. I'm using it to sculpt 3D characters, to texture them in Substance Painter. I've even used it to complete a client's artwork for them. That was a portrait. So it's definitely not impossible using cheap equipment. I just wanted to put that out there. I know a lot of people make videos like this, but I've been using this for 5 years, and I can, it's completely changed my mindset on cheap products, I guess. So yeah.